up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Good Anime Palette Podcast. This is episode number 83. This is the first... Wait a second, Jason. Hold on. Just let me think about it for a sec, because I really did mess up. Are we going to do a retake? Fuck it. We're not going to do a retake.
This is how we're going to
roll it. This is episode number 85, okay? Jason, get it together, okay? Okay. Episode number 85. What's up, guys?
Well, first of all, it's not just a regular episode 85.
Oh, God.
We are, we're no longer in season 7 anymore.
Well, I didn't say that yet, yes. But, yeah.
Yeah, we are now entering a new era within the Good Anime Palette podcast lore. We are now entering season 8. So, welcome all. Welcome new listeners, old listeners, not talking about age or, state of mind here. We're just mentioning if you're just checking into the podcast, you're going to be experiencing some cool-ass shit. And if you are a seasoned listener of the GAP, you can expect a lot of the same stuff, but with a few new twists and turns, because we're going to be trying a couple new formats. We're going to be trying to introduce new styles of doing these recordings, trying to maybe bring in some people to sit in and record with us. Ooh, who knows what's going to happen there. But nonetheless, we are going to be going into a tried and trusted format that we have been doing for the past year, and it seems to be something that's really popular with the listeners of GAP. We're going to be doing the ASAP again. So, Jason's back on the mic. It's hot and ready. How are you going to spit some fire now?
I just like mind fucked myself into a corner there. I literally just had my hands in my face.
You were still stuck on the last recording because that was when we were doing episode 83.
I was like having a trauma PTSD moment.
Maybe you're just not ready to move into the new season. You just want to hold back onto the memories of what we've created over the past 3 years. Not quite ready to take that leap yet.
Yeah, I'm ready to keep embracing and always lamenting on the past and never moving on. But
that's a real purgatory state. You don't know whether to move on or to go back.
Yeah, You're always in limbo. That kind of sucks, right? But what doesn't suck though is our 6th iteration of our ASAP, and we have 4 mangas for you again. This time around though, okay, so now my cylinders, my mind palace is starting to awake, and our choices this time around, I would argue, is a bit more on the unique side compared to other ASAPs, or particularly with the next ASAP, where we would talk about mangas that are premiering in the fall, because there are definitely, just like every other year, very hype shows in the fall. But with the summer, it's kind of like,
It's a crapshoot. It's more often than not a 50-50 whether something is going to be good or not. Historically, whenever we've done anime retrospectives in terms of looking at how anime has progressed or just performed in general over the year, we find that summer tends to have a bit of a dearth when it comes to really hype anime adaptations, and so it did take a little bit of digging to find some quote unquote good stuff to read and to review for this ASAP. But I think whether or not we fully enjoyed or just despise what we read, we wanted to be able to at least give a pretty good rundown of what to expect for certain series within the upcoming season, or the upcoming seasons, because some of these are either releasing in summer, some may be in fall, some might even be coming out even early 2025. You don't know. Some of them have already got a confirmed date of release. Some of them, it's just the year, and then we don't know whether it's going to be a particular season. It might even be delayed a bit longer. Who knows? But that's not really important at the moment. What we want to go straight into then is, let's just talk about some manga.
Yeah, and this time around, though, as Will said, we usually pick the release dates from different premiere dates. Sometimes in very far-flung in the future, it just has an anime adaptation announced, or the next season. But this time around, it's all summer. So rather than having some in the fall or 2025, we just went with all 4 summers. So let's start with our first manga, which is No Longer Allowed in Another World, based on the ongoing manga series of the same name, written by Hiroshi Noda and illustrated by Takahiro Wakamatsu. originally published in Japanese by Yawaraka Spirits and published in English by Seven Seas Entertainment. Currently, it has a MAL score of 7.41 and rank 3835. Popularity is pretty good, 2737. Has increased since last time I updated our docket, so that's good. And this one, I think of the four, there are two that only had a summer 2024 announced date rather than an actual date. But it is produced by Atelier Pondak. And for those who don't know, they might recognize another anime that actually Will and I both quite like, Uncle Isekai, because it's directed by Shigeki Kawai. And so he's doing it again with another isekai, but something that is kind of offbeat of an isekai.
Well, let's go more into why it may be a good match in terms of the studio, the director, as well as the property that they're adapting. But maybe let's go into a bit more of the synopsis. You know, what is no longer allowed in another world other than it's another isekai.
So we have the plot synopsis here, but I'm going to just kind of paraphrase it. When we talk about the tried and true isekai trope, there's always going to be, the hero that teleports from another world, typically our modern day society going into a fantasy land. This is no different, except it starts on a very almost grim, emo tone.
It's dark humor.
Yeah. And it is like this tragic kind of situation where essentially an author who decided to do, again, there might be trigger warnings, and also, other than the plot synopsis, we won't go really in depth into like plot details. But essentially, they are perished, and they then get transferred into this new fantasy world. La 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 la. So what's so interesting this time around? Well, the guy is kind of unremarkable. He's a poet. He's a writer. So in initial inspection by, the deity, the goddess that has been teleporting this gentleman into this fantasy land, is just like, what's up with this guy? What's so good about him? And also, he just doesn't want to do anything. He doesn't have the gusto that, the typical isekai protagonist might have. So what's his deal? Oh, he's a lost cause. But turns out there might be something a bit more to that.
So when you actually read the synopsis, and this is a bit different from reading the MAL entry versus reading what's on Wikipedia, because when they actually give the name for this particular character, the main character of No Longer Allowed in Another World, if you look at Wikipedia, they just credit them as sensei, right? Because that's, for the most part, that's what the other characters call this particular main character. Whereas if you look at My Anime List, they actually credit him as Osamu Dazai. Now, for people who are outside of Japan and don't really read a lot of Japanese literature, that probably doesn't really count as a very significant name. But Osamu Dazai is actually a very, I wouldn't say controversial, but a very well-known writer in Japan who has written some very, very tragic and rough material that usually pertains to his life. He, in fact, in real life, was a very, very miserable person. One of the credited works that he's done that has been adapted multiple times, whether it's been done in a light novel version, whether it's been done in a manga. I don't believe there is an anime adaptation for it yet, but because of the fact that it's kind of like in that open reign realm where you could just take the story and adapt it the way you want. That's why there's I believe that No Longer Allowed, No Longer Human was adapted at least 3-4 times as a manga. But that's not the most important part.
And that's one of the actual author's work?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just making sure, yeah.
He's also the same character name as one of the main characters in Bungo Stray Dogs.
Oh, yes. I didn't know that.
So that's why if
oh, snap.
So that's why you coming in, you probably had no idea.
I had no idea.
But me reading this, I was like, yeah, I know exactly who the fuck this person is.
Oh, really?
That's
actually kind of interesting because yeah.
So that's why, I think if you come in from the Japanese perspective, or if you are familiar with Osamu Dazai, then reading all the shit that happens through Volume 1 and beyond, at least when I was reading just Volume 1, I was like, this makes absolute sense why he's such a fucking sad rag of shit.
Is it kind of like, oh, if you know the historical figure of, like, let's say Nobunaga, then having that historical context would provide some insight that an average person would be like, okay, I guess he's just a really good, general, I guess, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you knew about look, I think even Giguk a while back read No Longer Human, and he was like, oh no, maybe it was either Giguk or Anime Man, so like Joy Bissinger. They were like, this is possibly the most depressing thing they've ever read. So
it sounds like an Anime Man would do, though.
But it's also like, it's very visceral when you're reading it, because what you're reading is essentially a documentation of this particular person's life and how depressing and broken this person is. And therefore, when you then sort of relate it back to No Longer Allowed in Another World, I mean, dude, the fact that the names are so similar, right? It could not be more of an homage to, the writings and the stylings of Osamu Dazai.
It reminds me of the woman who wrote a bunch of mangas, like My Lesbian Experience with Loneliness. Yeah. I'm trying to find it right now. Nagata Kabi. It just reminds me, I don't know if it's exactly the same, but it just reminds me of, it's very autobiographical, and it's just very grim, depressing, has some hopeful messages, I guess, here and there, but it's a very real, visceral, raw deal kind of journey.
Yeah. I'm not going to equate both works, just because the level of depression that one can get from reading either, like, you don't want to be like, oh, I felt the same way reading this as I felt reading this, because they're both completely personal experiences, but both just as depressing. Like, you understand the context behind why that person chose to write that particular material.
Side note, you said there's a Bungo Stray Dogs character based on this actual author, right?
I mean, it's the main character. Yeah.
Wait, is he the detective?
He's the detective, yes.
In the trench coat?
Yes.
Holy shit! I didn't know that. Okay.
That's the main. I mean, like, if you also know the power that that particular Bungo Stray Dogs character has, it makes sense. So
he has a book.
No, it's not. It's not. No.
Okay. No. I mean, I don't know. Okay.
He has the. I'm going to actually withhold that, because if we are going to continue doing another series after we finish our current iteration of the Gotta Watch 'Em All. Yeah,
I mean, I'll find out. So I'll definitely find out.
I don't want to spoil anything. But back onto the manga itself. So the way that it's written is very, it's very cliche. I have to be perfectly honest. In terms of when the characters actually, perish. The fact that they're just like, no bullshit. And again, the way that we do this is the first couple of chapters, it's free game. If we're going to spoil anything, like, we're not spoiling anything beyond like chapter 5, 6, when the plot actually starts to thicken, because we want to at least, like, set the world right.
Yeah, I would say the first volume is mandatory reading for both of us, and it's somewhat free game in terms of what we spoil and not. I read probably up to where I would probably consider the first cur would end. I just
read the first volume. I read the first volume for everything except one manga. Even that one I only read like 2 volumes. But like, I think it's like, that's generally how I feel like I wanted to go into reading this stuff, because it's like, if I read everything, right, whatever was available, then I wouldn't have as much of like a inkling to go and watch the anime, since I already know what's happened. That's pretty much why, like, I only watched one episode of Solo Leveling and then just left it, because I already knew. I mean, I've read pretty much the whole thing.
I mean, that's very apt that you say that too. I mean, I think that's legit.
That's why, like, I chose to at least limit myself in terms of how much I read. And I think a volume maximum is a good barometer of how an anime is going to be adapted. So yeah, the 2 characters just die from getting hit by a truck. Not even like, just no preamble, just straight up. They're holding hands, they're staring at each other, professing their love for each other, and their wish to die. And then all of a sudden, boom! They turn around, car kills them. I mean, a truck kills them. And then the titular character, not the titular, the main character, Osamu Dazai, or just Sensei from now on, because that's generally how he's been called, wakes up in another world because he's been reincarnated to be the hero of this particular realm, except that he wants nothing to do with it. He just wants to die. He was essentially, stripped of his perfect death. That was taken away from him because he wanted to make, his death as beautiful and as enjoyable as possible. Nothing would excite him more than pursuing the perfect death. And that's all he wants to do in this world. So he just does whatever he can to off himself, whether it comes to, drinking poison or jumping off a bridge or finding, a blade to jab his throat into. But wherever he goes, there's always people that just stop him because they just look at this broken, wretched man and wonder, who wronged you? Why are you like this? Why do you, disregard life with so much vitriol? And then he's just like, because that's what I want. This is the thing that is the most beautiful crescendo in my life.
Yeah, it's like my right in many ways, and you guys took it from me.
So that part of the manga, at least, for the whole series, in terms of the plot, I thought was cool. I mean, like it's tried and true in terms of this really depressed person wanting to find ways to just off themselves. Not to say that this is a complete reflection of the real life Osamu Dazai, but you could kind of see, similarities in terms of how they viewed life and what they wanted to do with themselves. And I thought that was the main good part. The thing that started to get me a little more disinterested in the manga, on the other hand, though, was when they started introducing a harem. That was the part where I think, understandably, it's when you have that crazy juxtaposition of like the most depressed man in the world with the most buxom and well-breasted main female characters,
well endowed, and
one being a cat girl, one being an elf, and then another one being some sort of dragonkin of sorts. That part kind of really threw me off. For some, I'm sure it would be enjoyable because just seeing that clash of characters is enough for people to be really interested. Not to mention, those kinds of characters appeal to certain types of manga/anime viewers. So I can see why it's in there. For me, it just felt like it went a bit too far. I have no problem in terms of introducing ecchi elements, but it didn't really seem to have much of a positive effect in terms of me appreciating the manga and potentially the anime more.
Okay. So I read about 3 volumes, and I think where the 3rd volume ends really is probably, I think, sometimes when you read up to a point, you're like, oh, okay, this is probably where a good point of the anime or a cour would end. And the reason why I read ahead, other than just usually I do anyways, is also to see if my hunch when reading the first volume was correct. I have to say that this was, of the 4 mangas, the last one that I actually started reading, and actually the most hesitant. But in the beginning, I think...
Is it just because it's an isekai?
A little bit.
That definitely played an effect, right?
Yeah, and I don't think anyone can fault us for thinking about that and being very skeptical going in and looking at the posters like, hey, one dude and then 3 women. Okay, what are you doing here?
But granted, it also, of the 4 mangas we are talking about today, does have the highest score. Marginally. The other one is just below it with a 7.40. This one currently sits at a 7.41. So, you can, make your choice there. But
and it seems quite appropriate that the director of Uncle Isekai, or Osekai Oji-san, is slated to do this kind of offbeat.
This is where I think when in terms of bringing in Atelier Upon Dark with what they've done along with the director for Uncle from Another World, it makes sense because it's that offbeat humor. It's that juxtaposition of this completely reversed hero that's been brought into a new world, and you're expecting them to act like a hero, but it turns out they're actually not cut out for it. They actually have their own modus operandi, they have their own goals, and it just goes against, I guess, the conventions of what an isekai really is all about.
Yeah, and subverting expectations of not only the viewer and reader, but also the characters that are in that world is kind of like the whole shtick of Uncle Isekai, as well as No Longer Allowed Another World. However, I also agree with Will fully in that I was actually super digging maybe like the first like 2 chapters, because it was like, okay, this is kind of novel. Okay, this is kind of interesting. I don't necessarily subscribe to the belief that like this guy is kind of glorifying offing himself, but I get the premise of it, the hook, right? And it does sound really fucked up in a very weird, like a really morbid way to say that. To me, that is actually the most attractive part of the IP.
I think what it does is it sort of tests the mettle of, you know, the human condition of whether, I don't want to say the word because it's definitely a trigger warning, but it's like willingly offing oneself versus pursuing the perfect, beautiful death. Like, the way that I usually would see it is there's no fucking difference between the two. But for this particular character, that's what their journey is. That's what their life goal is. Their life goal is to end their life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very, very depressing reading that. But when you juxtapose it with a lot of the humor that's in the manga, you get a little bit more comfortable reading it.
Yeah.
This is definitely not something that like you go in thinking, oh, this is going to be like an amazing kind of comedy. I'm going to be, you know, laughing my socks off and all that. No, it's
definitely a dark comedy.
It definitely gets you thinking. And of course, right? Like when it comes to dark comedy, like there are really no bounds in terms of how far you take things, right?
Yeah.
We've definitely seen some really fucked up stuff. But then what was more fucked up was that we ended up laughing at it because it's the absurdity of the situation that kind of like the only thing you can do in terms of reacting is to just let out a laugh.
Right, because it's uncomfortable. The other thing that I also think is quite relevant is the quote-unquote ability that the protagonist sensei has, which is actually, I think, quite ingenious in the beginning because he essentially doesn't have like super crazy powers. I mean, I think there is like some hidden thing that gets revealed later on, but really his way to navigate or, you know, overcome certain obstacles of like enemies or whatnot is essentially doing what an author does. And I think that part is actually really cool as well, because it's not like you fight your way through or you use an OP power. Like his OP power is like rationalization and logic and, you know, artistic integrity and things like that.
But I think the ultimate power he has is indifference.
Yeah.
He literally does not give a fuck what's going on. He just wants to, you know, do what he wants.
Yeah.
That's essentially it.
And everyone is just so enamored by it. I mean, that's why he has that harem, right?
Yes.
Everyone's following because like, whoa, this guy's different. Even though I probably shouldn't follow him, but he's kind of cool, I guess.
Yeah, because for them, it's this is not the cookie cutter isekai hero, right? They've been doing these isekai hero resurrections through multiple generations, like, you know, the whole thing with elves, right? Living longer than any other, you know, humanoid life form. And so this particular elf has now seen like a multitude of heroes just come and go because once they've achieved their goal, it just seems that life is meaningless to them and they're kind of just drolls. Whereas you see this person, right? Osamu Dazai / Sensei, and she's just like, the fuck is wrong with this person?
But it's different.
I think I love him.
It's a breath of fresh air.
I want to help him. I want to help him off himself. What is going on? And I think if you kind of, you know, accept that that's the direction of the humor within No Longer Allowed Another World, you're probably going to enjoy this. It's I'm not saying it's like completely unique. There's definitely been like other mediums, other, you know, forms of literature that kind of, you know, follow that formula. But at least within like recent anime and manga, this one does pique interest in terms of wanting to see an isekai, a humorous isekai that takes a spin on what it means to be funny.
Now, what I will say is very close to the end of Volume 1 and then 2 and 3, it actually made me did not like the series.
End of 1, 2, and 3. So basically
end of Volume 1.
Okay. So not 2 and 3, just end of Volume 1. Yeah, okay.
And Volume 1 onwards, sorry.
Yeah.
So end of Volume 1 and then Volume 2 and Volume 3, it becomes very cliche, typical isekai. It lost its shine. The world gets more fleshed out. I will say that they reveal more of the lore, I guess, but then it becomes just a hero's journey. But it's like an odd, atypical hero's journey. The parallel to Uncle Isekai is so apt, not only because of the adaptation that is going to be announced is done by and directed by the same studio and director who did Uncle Isekai, but I think Uncle Isekai has legs that stand, but this doesn't.
See, this is why like I didn't want to read beyond Volume 1 because this is the situation that I'm talking about, where like once you actually get into the nitty-gritty, you then are a lot more certain of whether you want to watch it or not. Whereas, just kind of having a bit of a teaser by reading Volume 1, you might pique your interest and you might actually then go on to watch the anime. But I do agree that when it got to the final chapter of Volume 1, it became very clear that my original thought of it being very cliche was 100% correct.
Yeah.
It just felt like this is the direction you're going in with this manga, and this is what we're going to be getting when the anime gets adapted. Ooh, this may not be what I hoped for the manga to be.
And I like the fact that Will usually only reads one volume or two rather than
because it's good to have like two different perspectives and two different ways of appreciating and at least consuming the manga, right? In preparation for the adaptation.
Absolutely. And there are things like the Fable that I think is like your absolute favorite. And
I mean that was where I broke that cardinal rule that I had
it's
because I essentially read the whole damn thing
and then the sequel, right?
The sequel was good too.
Yeah. So not throwing shade at that. It's just more of like it's good that there are different levels of knowledge going into it, because it provides a different perspective.
So where do we stand on this in terms of like is this a recommendation? Because let's be real, right? Like it does fit that particular niche of that hero journey isekai formula, right?
Yes.
And it also adds a bit of a very dark twist that at least kind of breaks certain conventions of what you expect from a typical hero isekai. So I would say that it would work for 50% of the people. It's not going to be like a massive like sell for everybody, but I think it also would still like perform decently, like a 7.6, 7.5 maybe.
Oh really? I think it will be like a 7.2.
That's still fine. I think like in terms of like as long as it's over a 7, right? Like, I think that's like the bare minimum you want to see your anime perform. Right?
Yeah.
And again, this is just my anime list. So this is just mostly international viewers. Doesn't really matter how it's taken, in Japan, because most people in Japan don't use my anime list. They have their own databases there.
Yeah.
So it could be wildly popular in Japan, but kind of lukewarm in the U.S. Doesn't really matter.
I would say the 3-episode rule probably will apply in that. After the 3-episode rule, it would just probably...
But you kind of already... since you and I have already read it, you kind of know where episode 3 is going to end.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
So I think by that point, you will know if this is something that works for you or not. Especially because a lot of stuff kind of works really slowly in the first volume. So when you were saying that 3 volumes in one cur, at least is it going to be one cur? I thought that was a bit rushed, but then like thinking back on how they actually paced things in Volume 1, I was like, yeah, no, they're gonna have to speed things up somehow. So maybe 2.5, 3 volumes, something like that. Yeah. Definitely beyond the first volume. There's no way they can just do Volume 1 for the first curve.
I just think it's all right. That's how I see it. But at the same time, there is no better person or studio to take the helm.
No, this is
the
perfect trifecta there of the source, the studio, and the director. So let's just wait and see. So it comes out in the summer, which is just right around the corner. No official release date yet, but expect to come out in like a month or two.
Yeah, July is usually where it goes.
Yeah. So we move on to the next manga series that is going to be adapted for the summer. My Wife Has No Emotion, based on the ongoing manga series of the same name, written and illustrated by Jiro Sugiura, originally published as a webcomic on the author's Pixiv account in March 2019. It began serializing later as a manga published in Media Factory's monthly comic Flapper magazine in August 2019, and it is also published in English digitally by Seven Seas Entertainment. As mentioned, this is the other one that was the highest scoring manga that we're reviewing for this episode. Currently sitting at a raw score of 7.40. Rankings are kind of similar, except for maybe the membership part. It's a little bit lower than No Longer Allowed into the World. My Wife Has No Emotion currently sits at just under 6,000 members. So the anime adaptation is expected to be coming out on July 2nd. So literally the first week of the summer season. This is the part that's a little bit
Iffy.
Tezuka Productions is going to be taking the helm of the production process. So let's go into a quick sort of synopsis, and then let's break this shit down. So, single dude, working, going home, does nothing. This is this guy. His name is Takuma. He just doesn't have the energy to be able to do things outside of the office. Once he's done with his work, he goes home, literally eats whatever is available, and goes to sleep. How is he able to do that, though, if he's not able to cook? Well, he keeps a house robot at home. Mina-chan is the housekeeper / robot that essentially facilitates the chores and the non-work essentials that Takuma needs to do. So things like doing laundry, doing general housekeeping, preparing food, grocery shopping, and whatnot. And one night, Takuma, while he's having his food, he really enjoys the food because Mina is programmed to be able to cook his favorite foods, knows how to cook it, knows when to prepare it, and knows that when he's coming home, able to serve it immediately. So he's cooling off, having a drink. He's getting a little bit drunk.
A little bit saucy, yeah.
And then, Mina-chan, you cook really well. You take good care of me. It's almost like you're my wife. Yeah, you're my wife, right? Next morning, wakes up to Mina staring at him, and he's like, hello. I am your wife. What? You said that you wanted me to be your wife. I did. Huh.
Okay.
Are you okay with that? I don't know. I am programmed to do whatever you tell me to do. Okay, you're my wife then.
Yeah, all right.
And that's how the manga starts.
Yeah, exactly. A couple of things to also note is that it is take place in modern society.
It's a very contemporary setting. Yes.
Right. So as a typical salaryman is Takuma, So
imagine like real life right now, but your Google AI is now actually a humanoid robot.
Instead of I'm not going to say the name because my phone will actually light up with Siri, but Siri or Alexa would actually be a person.
Yes.
Oh my God! It actually just woke up. Okay, but imagine that being an actual person. In terms of like a robot. I think it's like, remember that Robin Williams movie, Bicentennial Man?
No.
Oh, okay, that's a super old movie.
I watched a lot of Robin Williams, but not that one. No.
I really liked that movie growing up. But anyways, robots exist, and it's fully functional and very much integrated into modern society in this world. Now, I have to kind of give a preface, is that I've been mentioning this manga for a while now, and I wanted an anime adaptation for a long time. I also have kept up with all the manga up to the current chapter.
It might not be the studio you want.
It might not be the studio that I want, but I'm still glad it got an anime adaptation, and I'm kind of iffy in terms of talking about it for ASAP contender at the time because I didn't know how to handle it if I want to or not, but here we are. So, you probably know, Will, my thoughts and feelings on this manga, but I'm actually extremely interested in knowing how you feel about the manga.
Reading it immediately, I felt this is just Chubbits, right?
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Right? Throwback to like 2006 or whenever the fuck Chubbits came out.
A Clamp classic, yes.
I mean, I really liked it, but it also, even older than that. Like the anime actually came out in 2002. The manga came out, Y2K. So that was just literally right the turn of the millennium when people were really freaking out about how like the internet and like robots and
plane schedules and clocks and everything.
I mean, like I remember when I was like I was 9. No, I was still 8, turning 9 at that point, and I was with my family in Malaysia, and we were there celebrating New Year's, and I was just thinking, Y2K's happening. That means like all the clocks are gonna be fucked up. The TV's gonna be blurring, like some warning signs and shit. Planes are gonna be falling out of the sky. I woke up, nothing fucking happened. Absolutely nothing. I woke up to a dark room, turn on the lights. It's like, this is just normal shit. Okay, I guess my wild 8-year-old imagination ran wild.
Well, same with the rest of the world for a lot of it.
One of my friends made a good amount of money from Y2K because he was selling like anti
bunkers.
No, he was selling anti Y2K software.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, it was bunk, but he made a fuck ton of money from doing it.
Okay, so it does remind me of Chobits, but I think the way that it is tackled here is rather than going the more ecchi route.
I think essentially the difference here is the main character and my wife has no emotion wants the wife to love him.
Right.
Whereas Chobits wants the robot to fuck him.
Yeah.
That's the main difference.
Yes.
But you can't do that because the reset button is somewhere within the whereas with wife has an emotion, she can't love him because she's not programmed to do that. Or maybe she can. Who knows? Because as the series develops, again, this is the one where I actually read about 2 volumes. Just for research purposes.
Yeah. No, hey, it is for research purposes.
As
right?
I was reading it, it was just like, this is it's very wholesome, but it's also very like it taps into a very taboo subject, right? In terms of robosexuality,
right?
In terms of like what it means to have human and robot relationships. The fact that over the last decade, people have been clamoring about with the way that AI has been developing. This is how it works. Any major technological advancement, it immediately involves
pornography
in sex, right? Like internet. Oh, is there porn on it, right? Oh, AI. We're going to be able to make automated robots. Can we fuck it?
I mean, the VHS tape and Blu-ray, I think, I can't say definitively, but to my knowledge, the porn industry helped propel those formats.
Yep.
So, like, whether you like it or not, or whether you believe it or not, in my opinion, sex, pornography, ecchi fan service content has propelled technology at a certain point, and they're usually very innovative in adopting these kinds of technologies.
Then you get like paid online services and social media. Of course, you're going to have a porn version of it, right? And this is kind of, a similar trend in terms of like whether or not it's okay to actually have not just intimate but sexual relations with a robot. The way that the characters take it in the manga, it's kind of like people have that acceptance that it could potentially lead to that, in that this is potentially the curiosity within the human mind of, well, we can love humans and there's different ways of loving each other, and this robot is meant to be able to replicate a lot of human qualities. Where's the separation in terms of what's a robot and what's a human? And that's the kind of thing they tackle in terms of My Wife Has No Emotion. It's it definitely gets into the more wholesome aspects in terms of these two characters developing their relationship. I was pleasantly surprised, but also like thankful that it decided to go the wholesome route.
Yeah.
Except that there was also there is another robot in this manga series that definitely goes a bit more into the Chobits side.
Yes. It takes place on a beach, right? Yeah. Okay, so
the fact that I was watching and everyone was just like very cool and normal about this character. It's like, oh, it's just a robot. But in my mind, it's like, why did you design the robot like that? Like, there's clearly a reason why you're marketing this person, this kind of robot, where they also have heightened emotions and like simulate human behavior to a point. And why else would you market this to people? And they give that robot to a child.
Yes. I think one of the things that My Wife Has No Emotions is really good at, especially when it goes further into, the manga and probably into even the later episodes of maybe the first Cur, right? It actually goes into this kind of debate or philosophical argument and discussion around these kinds of questions of robotic love. Is that a thing? Can they actually do that? And that's something that I don't know if it will ever translate well in anime form, or if it's even as a manga reader you jive with it.
What's different about this compared to Chobits is with Chobits there was a massive stigma that was coming in from humans in that you absolutely cannot have relationships with a robot. What the fuck's wrong with you? Whereas the inverse happens in My Wife Has No Emotion, where the robots are so into their programming that for anything that kind of breaks their circuitry, that breaks the way that they have been programmed to view the world, that's a no-no. And it's not. So the humans, on the other hand, are the ones who are like, why not? Like, why not consider them to be your wife? Why not consider this robot to be part of your family? And Robot's like, no, you designed us to not do that. Therefore, we're going to enforce that. And so that kind of difference in terms of the people who view this as a taboo subject is kind of interesting. It's not the humans that are like, no robosexuality. That is sacrilegious. You cannot fuck a robot. You cannot marry a robot. Whereas robots here now are like,
I'm not programmed to do that. I'm deviating from my purpose.
Whatever is happening in terms of this robot simulating human emotion is just purely a feature within our programming. And if it goes beyond it, then it's a bug and we need to fix it.
Yeah, and it's not just like the engineers who think that way or something. No, it's the robots themselves, like Mina-chan being like, yo, I don't know what's going on, but this is not good. I should probably reset myself. Takuma, please send me and then to get repaired or whatever. And then he's like, no. And I think the obvious thing that happens, I think somewhere very beginning, is the introduction of Takuma's sister that shows up once. And her reaction, as you probably would surmise, is extremely different than what you would expect from like these typical kind of shows where they talk about robot-human relationships.
It was very clear in terms of the introduction of the sister who the ecchi degen character is. Especially the way that they also designed her character.
Yep.
That was also the part where I was just like, I know what you're trying to do. It's not working on me. It was the same way when I was reading No Longer Allowed in Another World. I was just like, really don't need to have that much boob. But in terms of the character themselves and, how they view human robot, interrelationships, okay, this is probably the perfect character to have for this.
Yeah. And so now that we have gone to this point, let's talk about Tezuka Productions, which unfortunately I don't have that much positive things to say.
Well, let's pull up some of the stuff they've done in the past, right? So, they worked as a producer for Pluto. So, they weren't actually as part of like the studio that actually made it. They just essentially sort of bankrolled it. So they've had a part in that. But they've worked on The Fable, My Home Hero, Under Ninja, things that definitely should have been better. But the fact that all of them are like around a 7, that's actually decent, right? They did also work on
Dororo. They worked on.
They worked on Cafe Terrace.
Yes, they worked on Quintessential Quintuplets.
I mean, the fact that like Cafe Terrace was decent enough to get a second season, which is going to be coming out sometime this year. That's props to them. Actually, no, it's coming out next season.
Yeah,
So
the Kids on the Slope is done by them.
Kanajo Makamajo is also done by them too. So you could kind of tell, like what style they kind of go for when adapting anime and manga. I wouldn't say they're a terrible studio.
No, they are not. They are not.
It's hard. I think what they are is a studio that is willing to do anything, and that kind of is like the double-edged sword in that they're going to get a lot of work, and the fact that they're still getting a lot. I mean, they have 2 releases coming out in summer, right? That's productive.
Yeah,
or at least that just means they have a lot of work to do. Also does mean that the larger your sample size is, right, you're going to be seeing a lot more variation in terms of how certain things perform, right? They've done some pretty decent stuff, but they've also had some stinkers in terms of like their best production, and this is from a long time ago, right? The only 2 productions they've done as a studio that ranked above an 8 were Kids on the Slope,
which is also done by Mappa as well,
and Dororo, which was also not just Tezuka Productions, but also done with Mappa. So, I think,
yeah.
Who knows if they were doing a support role? Who knows if it was like a literal 50-50 split? So they are capable of doing some good work. I mean, a lot of stuff they've done before are like mid to high 7s, but it's just more recent track record that's a bit more worrying. But if we were to go by always, defaulting to the studio in terms of how an anime is going to be done and how it's going to be received, then it kind of just stunts us from wanting to watch anime in general, right? Like you don't want to just be like, oh, because this studio is doing this anime, I'm not going to watch it. Oh, I'm definitely watching this anime by this studio, but we've also been burned by it before as well.
Yeah, I think The Fable is the most recent example of that for us.
No, that's the example of that's an example of like the first thing I was talking about, where like, hey, like bad studio, this is probably bad. Whereas like good studio can also make bad shit too.
Oh, right. I see what you mean.
I mean,
yeah.
Let's not forget, Tokyo 24th Ward and Cloverworks, right?
Yeah. It's like you usually give the benefit of the doubt, but then it's like the opposite of like subverting expectations, where in Cloverworks' case, when shit is bad, you're like, the fuck, man, because you're expecting it to be better.
The lows are a lot lower when you have expectations of a studio that usually consistently makes good work, and then they drop a stinker, and you're like, oh, wow, I feel really betrayed. Whereas when you look at Tezuka Productions, like, it's going to suck anyway. Ish, right? Like in terms of like that kind of perception.
And then
of
you're
a
like,
studio.
oh, it's not that bad actually. Wow, it's pretty good, So
yeah. I mean, the fact that like the last 3 things they worked on, aside from Under Ninja, was above a 7, must have meant that enough people liked it enough. Whether or not there'll be a continuation of those particular series, in this particular case, My Home Hero and The Fable, who knows, right?
It's also important to note that with My Home Hero has over 124K members on my anime list.
Yep.
Cafe Terrace 113K. Sure, Under Ninja probably is 63K.
It's one of the more unknown ones, but the fact that it's 63K is...
Yeah, and the Fable being almost 54.9K. The end of the day, what I'm trying to say is they have a very large fan base of people that are going to the effort of rating it or watching it on my anime list, which to me says something. To me says that Tezuka Productions does good and produces consistent work to a certain degree that you cannot be like super surprised or super disappointed.
And also working on properties that have enough of a fandom to be able to at least garner some viewership, right? Whether good or bad.
Yeah.
In the end, like, I think this is also like, something we've talked about in terms of like mal scores and all that shit, where like, just because something is rated a 6 doesn't mean it's a 6 for everybody, right? Just because somebody sees it as a 10 definitely doesn't mean it's the best anime of all time for other people too.
Yeah.
So take it what you will. I think that when it comes to watching My Wife Has Emotion, it is easier to remove yourself from attaching the Tezuka Productions tag on this production and just view the manga getting adapted. That's how I would try and get people to go into it. Like, ignore the fact that it's Tezuka Productions.
Mm-hmm.
Just watch the manga. Just watch the anime, because the manga's decent. It's actually pretty good. Like I quite liked the sort of banter that a lifeless, soulless, emotionless robot has with their human owner, or human husband, and then like trying to see how those two clash together and actually create a relationship, or at least try to create a semblance of what a standard relationship is, quote unquote.
And
right?
they really go all the way in navigating and tackling all these different facets of it. So I am really hot on the manga. I think the anime adaptation would be fine, is sort of my guess.
Would you rate it higher in terms of, how it's going to be received on my anime list compared to No Longer Allowed?
Ooh. I was going to...
Because I think, like, when it comes
That's
to...
a good question.
Because I think, like, in terms of, like, the low to mid 7s is, like, always, like, the safest bunker to be in when trying to guess how an anime is going to, be received. Especially when it comes to manga series that don't have more than 10,000 members. Like it's a relatively small sample size, and the ones that are going to be really hot on it are probably the ones that are in Japan that know more about the series than people outside.
I think No Longer Allowed Another World will do better.
So you think that this one's more like a flat 7.1?
Yeah, or maybe high 6.9.
Yeah.
That is just my gut reaction, even though I want it to be the inverse.
I think what works for both of them, though, is the fact that they're tackling with material and also presenting the material in ways that offer a sense of familiarity with people. It's not going to be, like, completely avant-garde or, like, really, like, off-kilter. One is an isekai with some dark humor. One is a romance comedy that is a bit unconventional, but I think because of the fact that it still taps into those specific kinds of genres, those kinds of themes, that there'll be enough people to appreciate it. Whether or not that means you're going to love it, that's a whole different thing. So I think they'll probably perform similarly.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm a bit more optimistic than you. I think maybe like a 7.3 to 7.5. Like, I'm going to give them mid 7s. If it's any lower, then I feel that would be a bit harsh because I don't think they're bad series. I don't think that there's nothing to appreciate within these two. I definitely have my gripes with both of them in terms of just the way that certain characters are presented, how certain things are very cliche. But again, we're talking about a medium that's existed for like well over like 80 years. You're going to be running into repeat situations when reading new material.
And I think of the 4 mangas that we're talking about for ASAP 6, there is a lot of that trope of here is something that you probably expect in terms of, previous, iterations of that genre, but we're going to tweak it ever so slightly or go slightly off in a different tangent and see how it goes. And I think actually all 4 of them have that theme. But whether or not it works in the manga form or in the anime form has yet to be decided. So I will watch it regardless, even with No Longer Allowed, just to see.
I think the difference in terms of like what to expect is with No Longer Allowed, you can kind of see where it goes. Whereas with Why Wife Has No Emotion, I think the most important part is with most anime series, but in this one in particular, it's the voice acting.
Yeah.
The voice acting is going to be incredibly important.
So you bring up a good point, Will, which is, are you going to check the VA list right now? Or?
I'm looking at it right
because
now,
the thing I think about No Longer Allowed in Another World is more like I can predict with more certainty, at least. Not absolute certainty, obviously, but more certainty in terms of how I would feel, and the general, public, so to speak, at least on my anime list. However, with My Wife Has No Emotions, I'm almost somewhat curious to see how it will be received, because you can interpret it as like, a diamond in the rough, because, okay, maybe it won't be pizzazz in terms of animation, but it doesn't need it either. But it tackles subjects that is probably extremely relevant nowadays. So I don't know. I mean, it could really go up like better than I expect.
So in terms of the VA for what's her name, for Mina, the robot, right? Relatively junior. She's only been working at least gotten some work since 2022. Her first role was a supporting role in Slow Loop. She did do a performance, a Nopi performance for DIY. She was also one of the characters there too. She has worked on.
Those are all pretty good shows to me.
The Maid, the Duke of Death and His Maid.
Okay.
She was one of the supporting characters. She's done actually a lot of support work in the past, except that she was one of the main characters for DIY. So this is, essentially another chance for her to break into a main character role as opposed to a supporting role. The VA that will be doing the counterpart, Takuma, has actually been working for well over 10 years.
Yeah, I recognize his what do you call it, like a headshot portrait? Yeah. But the Mina-chan thing is the part that is the hardest to overcome, in my opinion, because
I think when you take a chance on a relatively rookie VA that also has been doing a lot of support work, I think she's definitely built up enough of a catalog, enough of a portfolio of work to be able to get this opportunity, and not to add pressure onto her. But I think the way that she recreates the character of Mina in an anime will pretty much drive whether or not this is going to be a popular series.
Because how can you sound robotic but also have emotions and also try not to... It's a fine line, right? To be convincing but not off-putting. It's like trying to put emotions in something emotionless. Essentially, My Wife Has No Emotions, right?
It's essentially on what side of the uncanny valley are you going to be? Are you going to be so stoic and just dull in terms of your delivery line that you are just a robot that has no emotion, or do you also then add a human twinge to it, which then would go against what the story is about, right? It's a very, very fine line. Which means that it's going to be very difficult to be able to actually create that sense of emotionless whilst trying to create emotion with the character.
And it's going to be interesting to see or hear regardless. So even though I'm not too optimistic, I am also extremely curious as to how it will be received.
I mean, you tend to be a bit more on the pessimistic side with things.
I mean, in general, yeah. I tend to be the more safe, conservative side. of things.
You basically you want to be more pleasantly surprised than like I told you so. Or
I've been
like,
burned so many times by my own expectations so often. So
I think that's it's a good point to take a break. We're going to go back into the second half later, talking about the other manga series. So yeah, no final words. Let's just put the brakes on it for now. We'll get back to you in a couple seconds. Welcome to the second half of today's episode of the Good Anime Palette Podcast. We are going to be continuing our discussion of manga series that are going to getting anime adaptations in the coming season. So we talked about No Longer Allowed Another World, along with My Wife Has No Emotion. You ready to crack on with the last two, Jason?
yeah, let's do it.
So we have talked about robot love. We've talked about wanting to off themselves in another world. Well, let's get round into talking about magic. Let's talk about some real fantasy battle anime and manga.
Let's talk about some shonen bullshit, kind of.
Wistoria, Wand and Sword.
Can I just say, okay, before we get into it, can I just say that name is the pinnacle of
This is what you get.
yeah, exactly. Okay, yeah, okay. So I wasn't freaking out. Okay. Okay.
It's based on the ongoing manga series of the same name, written by Fujino Omori and illustrated by Toshi Aoi. Originally published in English on Kodansha's shonen manga magazine, Basatsu Shonen Magazine, and also published digitally in English as on Kodansha USA. So, manga score 7.37, still pretty decent. It's actually kind of the same caliber of the previous two we talked about. Membership around 44,000, 4,400, sorry. And the anime adaptation is going to be coming out in the summer. No official premiere date. It will be licensed by Crunchyroll. This is the part where it gets a bit woo. This seems like there's a little too many chefs in the kitchen. It will be co-produced by Actus and Bandai Namco Pictures. Some staff pretty good, right? So you got Yuki Hayashi, who's done the music composition for My Hero Academia and Haikyuu, who'll be working on that, along with Tatsuya Yoshihara, who has worked on Black Clover, and they'll be responsible for directing, penning, and handling the series composition.
Okay. So
I'm in this manga. Will Surfort dreams of keeping his promise to a childhood friend by becoming a Magia Vander, a magician essentially. However, he sucks at magic.
oh shit.
Fucking sucks. Can't
Damn.
even do basic spells.
Oh, fuck.
But how do you stay in a magic academy if you can't do magic? Well, it turns out that there's actually a secret lair where you can go monster hunting, and through that you can also then gain credits to be able to graduate. So you don't actually have to just do magic spells and pass tests. You could also just brute force and kill monsters and gain credits that way.
And surprise, Will is as in the protagonist is really good at using a sword because he can't use magic.
Yeah. Surprise. This is why we have the title Wand and Sword for this particular manga series. Now, you can probably sense like a whole lot of /s, a whole lot of sarcasm in the way that we're talking about this thing, and it's not unfounded. We are literally saying this is as cookie cutter as it gets.
Several things I want to mention is right away. One of the few things that was already announced is that it is licensed by Crunchyroll. So that's one of the things I inserted in the doc, and it was quite interesting because right off the bat, they are all in on this.
That, and also it's like I think they know like this is like the perfect formula for a popular shonen action. So why don't we get on it?
Yeah, and Bandai Namco Pictures, very prolific, company. So they will do probably really fine anyways.
One thing I will say right off the bat is not all the characters, right? But I'm glad that some of the characters have regular English names, like Will, Edward, Liana. There's probably like a John or a Peter somewhere there.
There's
So
no
it's-
Jason though, unfortunately.
no, not in this world. But of course, because this is still a manga that's set in a magical world that is probably a bit European based. You're going to get some like Elfarias or Worknors or Sions or Ignores.
Magia Vander is just like the most pretentious kind of in your face. Hey, yo. It's magic, bro.
I'm going to just tell you right off the bat that this is essentially just a Mashal clone with Black Clover. It makes sense. I mean, the fact that the director has worked on Black Clover, like, you could not make this shit up. This is essentially just a reskin.
Not just that, but I find it hilarious that all of these different facets come together. And I mean, we'll get into how I feel and how we feel about the manga, right? But one thing I could say is that, similarly with No Longer Allow Another World, right? It's like, oh, you did Black Clover? And you're doing this adaptation? Yeah, okay. That's actually very good fit. Like, I get it.
Crunchyroll is licensing it, right?
Yep.
Bandai Namco Pictures is one of the producers for it. Director has done Black Clover, My Hero Academia, as well as Haikyuu, the music composer.
Music, yep.
Like, you know what the fuck they're trying to do with this thing.
Yes.
So, is there really much else to say about Wistoria, Wand and Sword, other than this is going to be the summer shonen banger that all the kids and the teens are going to be getting into?
What I will say is the manga art is actually quite really nice. Really pretty.
It's okay. It's okay.
Well, it looks sharp. I will say that.
I just gotta be very honest. Sometimes I just feel like a lot of manga art kind of just looks similar, especially when it comes to like the shonen action realm. Like it looks clean at the very least. Right?
Yeah. I think that's kind of what I'm going for in terms of trying to like describe it.
Like if you're going to be reading a shonen action, that's how it's going to look.
Either that or it looks fucking messy as fuck by design.
Well, I mean, like Demon Slayer,
or like Dan to Dan, or actually like, Dan to Dan's very sharp too.
Hunter x Hunter.
Yeah. yeah. Like there's no there's no middle ground. It has to go either extreme.
Oh, even One Punch Man too. Yeah.
One Punch Man. Yeah, with one. Yeah. Mob Psycho kind of shit. Yeah, like it's just okay. So, does the story matter? Not really, honestly.
No, absolutely not.
It is your typical kind of thing. The reason why I wanted to put this in here is because there isn't a lot of, I would say, summer blockbusters that Western, like the Western movie-going crowd is always known, or maybe less so nowadays with streaming and the Marvel fatigue. But back in the day, so to speak, the summer blockbusters is always like a shtick, always a trope, always something to expect with your popcorn movies. Like even since like Jaws, they call it blockbuster hits because it literally, like to watch the movie, the lines went around the block of the theater. That's literally why they called it summer blockbuster. And also to beat the heat, you go in to watch a movie.
I just realized. Okay, so
What's up?
There might be a reason as to why like there usually is a bit of a lull during the summer. It's because the Japanese academic year actually starts in April. So their first semester actually runs from April through to August, and then afterwards from September through to March. So then that way, like essentially the summer that most other places have, like in America, Canada, the US, the UK, and all that, where the summer is like free game, go do whatever the fuck you want. Japanese kids are still in school, so they're not going to be as able to watch anime. Whereas like when it comes to like the down periods of like the beginning of the year or like during the Christmas periods, that's why like whenever you see like fall and spring, that's when things really ramp up. It might make sense why there tends to be a bit of a lull in terms of the quality of anime and manga during the summers.
Yeah, I don't really know exactly how it works. All I know, it's like something to do with the school year and that it's always a lull around this time of year.
It's just, it's just probably other factors than just school, right? But the fact that like the main demographic of anime and manga that they're trying to target are, school kids. to probably try and cater it to like when's the most optimal time for him to watch it.
Now, one thing I also will say is on some forums, again, whether it's on the r/anime Reddit forums or on my anime list forums, there is a rumor that this would go for 26 episodes. There is no basis other than people saying it, so I will just mention that. I have no idea if that actually holds water. To my knowledge, there's no concrete evidence of this, but I also think it's rather interesting to mention. I will also mention I read 7 volumes of this.
Why?
I was just in the zone, I guess.
I stopped right after like the last chapter of volume 1 ended. Like this is I know what I'm getting when I read this.
Now, why did I read 7 volumes? Really, I don't know. I have no idea. I gave it a 7, I guess. I dropped it afterwards. I don't know why I read that long. I didn't need to, but that was what I did. And there really isn't anything else to say other than they probably kept up the same consistency in terms of storyline and reveals and everything. Like, it's not crazy in terms of these kinds of like shonen action hero's journey type shit. So that's all I'll say about that. Will.
So you mentioned that there's a lot of clamor on, the internet, right? That it's going to have a double curve release. There's also like a fair amount of people that are also saying that that the anime adaptation came too soon. In the fact that there's only 9 volumes, and if you were to go by them doing a double cur, half the material would be done.
Yeah.
Right? And they released the first manga, the first volume came out in 2020, so it's barely had like a 4-year run. There seems to be a bit more hesitation from fans as opposed to this is going to be fucking amazing. I mean, like there's like people saying, oh, it's come out too early. Maybe they're overhyping it. But at the same time, like you can't not hype a shonen action series. Like you have to do that, right? Like this is the way that anime and manga has succeeded throughout its history. It's when you create a hot series that essentially takes like all like young school children, young adults by storm by creating this hype machine, right? Every single shonen action has had that, whether it's with Hell's Paradise, whether it was Demon Slayer, whether it was Chainsaw Man. The fucking train for that hype was fucking insane.
You know those Western properties that are like young teen adult fiction? I think like Maze Runner, I think. There is like obviously Hunger Games. Yeah. But I would consider Hunger Games to be like the pinnacle of the top tier echelon of that genre,
I mean, the fact that like it was insane, like the amount of popularity that series had during that time, right? Like,
yeah,
people wanted to be Katniss Everdeen or whatever.
Yeah, Jennifer Lawrence, right? Yeah. But I would argue Wistoria, Wand, and Sword is not like the S tier of shonen action.
No, absolutely not.
But they're banking on it being like a B+, A-.
And I think like that's essentially what the studios and the publishers and the producers are trying to do, in that they're trying to maintain that level of shonen action throughout the year. And if you're not including sequels, this is probably the main one.
Yeah, because like what Kaiju number 8 made a huge splash. It is top 5, which I kind of predicted.
No, it's not.
It is.
Well, I mean, you also said it was going to be better than Chainsaw Man.
No, I said that.
Yeah.
It's not. But I did say it would be top 5.
That was to be for sure. That was going to happen. But the fact that you were like, oh, it's going to be well above an 8.51, and it's not even close.
No, I agree.
Yeah,
I mean,
but you're gonna
numbers are numbers.
You're gonna take a W wherever you can, right?
Yeah, I mean,
you're still wrong, but
Yo, listen. I'm gonna weasel my way through that.
Yeah, well, let's talk about this at another point, right?
Okay. The point I'm trying to make is similar with Kaiju number 8 being a non-sequel shonen action hype train. Wistoria, Wand, and Sword would be the summer equivalent. Now, will it hit those kinds of numbers? Absolutely not. I don't even expect it to. But it will be that one for the summer that is a non-sequel shonen action. And I don't think it is too hard to see that. Then when you get the person who is essentially in charge of the Black Clover anime, you're in pretty safe hands. When you have the backing of Bandai Namco, you're also in pretty safe hands in terms of budget. And it seems like that there is a lot of possibilities of it being a very consistent product. Now, whether or not it will be adapted for however long and of the source material, absolutely. However, I think one of the reasons why I wanted to put it here is because I think it's at least worth mentioning that, because we probably won't care about it when it premieres.
I mean, this is essentially the state of shonen action.
Yes.
Unfortunately. You're not always going to be having like a Hell's Paradise or a Demon Slayer or, you know, a Kaiju number 8. Especially like when it comes to like we can even talk about the whole, you know, slate that, you know, WSJ has, right?
Yeah.
But that's not for this discussion.
Stay tuned for that though.
I think that when it comes to the summer, you're going to have like your typical blockbusters, right? You're going to have your season 2 of Oshinoko, right?
Yeah.
You're going to be having your, I mean, the who knows how it's going to turn out, the Suicide Squad Isekai, right? You're going to have, you know, a new fairy tale coming out as well. And then like I think even like this one, right? Like Grandizer U, which is like within like the realm of like the Bazinga Z line. I think that's what it is. Anyways, you're trying to find a series that is going to be able to connect with, you know, your main demographic. That isn't going to be a sequel anime.
Yeah.
And if this is what the best you can offer is, I'm not like trying to critique it. I'm not saying that this is, you know, the death of shonen action. Far from it, right? But it does at least tell me that it's kind of slim pickings.
Well, no, I mean, I don't think it is the best choice, but that's because of the timing of it, right? I would argue if I had a hype shonen action series, I would probably put it in the fall / winter.
You're not going to be doing it during the summer. But
Yeah.
at the very least, you still want to continue having something during the summer, right?
And especially when there is not, quote unquote, that much competition, you're going to want to, people would want to fill that void every anime seasonal lineup, right? They always want the new hot thing per anime season. And I think if no one's clamoring for that spot and you're the only one, you're just going to be top dog either way. Or at least you're going to get the eyeballs, and hopefully you can convince them to stay and watch. So that's why I think Wistoria Wand and Sword is an okay manga, and it will be a fine adaptation.
It's okay because of the fact that it is a shonen action. That's mainly it. It has the ingredients to be able to at least sustain attention because of the fact that you've got Bandai Namco, Black Clover director, right?
And
Music composer,
Hayashi. Let's
right?
talk about the music.
The music composer, right? And then it's a shonen action, right? So you're going to be fine in terms of getting viewership. Whether it's going to sustain beyond just this current season, who fucking knows? But as long as it does well in the summer, it's done its job.
And I think it will. But whether or not it stands the test of time, I don't think so. And I don't know.
I don't think it's going to be higher than a 7.5.
I think you're roughly right. I think you're thereabouts. I think it will also have a high amount of members just because it's shonen action, but that's really it.
I mean, define high amount though, right? Like
Over 90?
Ooh, I'd say 50, which is still good. I'd say 50K because at the moment, right now, it hasn't released yet, right? But it's still only at around like less than 10K.
Ooh, that's pretty low for a pre-release. I mean, it's not.
Oh no, sorry, 13K. Actually,
okay,
13K.
actually, 13K is actually quite high for a pre-release members number, but not like.
But you mean you're also in a season when there's Fairy Tail and Oshinoko, right?
Correct,
Like
and also that number dramatically changes. Like, you know, for example, like all the other mangas that we talked about, they usually have a couple of K members like waiting plan to watch. One of them being me, because I always just put it on my plan to watch so I get notifications. But 13K is a lot, but I don't think it's that much compared to similar demographic shows. But I think it would be a fine show. I'll probably watch one episode or two just to see.
I think like the summer was probably the best time to release Wistoria.
For sure.
Yep.
Because you're going to lose in the fall, in the winter. Absolutely.
Yep. We now go on to the last manga series we'll be talking about in today's ASAP. My dear friend Nokotan. Based on the ongoing manga series of the same name, written and illustrated by Qeeo. That's literally their name, or their pen name at least. Originally published in Japanese by Kodansha Shonen magazine, manga magazine, Shonen magazine Edge, from 2019 November, and as well as Magazine Pocket, December 2023. Published in English digitally by Seven Seas Entertainment. Raw score of 7.1, and also the lowest membership of the 4 we've been talking about today with 1,396. Now, it's going to be coming out in the summer, July 7th, and it's going to be produced by weirdly Wit Studio.
Yo.
Which, this is exactly what I was talking about. When you see the studio, you're like, oh, it's going to be great, right? But let's dispel that first, right? Because Wit Studio, they're going through some motions right now in terms of we have no idea what the fuck they're doing, but let's just let them cook, right? Like, let's just see.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you finish with Studio. I'm gonna let you finish, right? Yeah.
Right. So, my dear friend Nokotan.
How are we gonna summarize this?
Well, let's. I'll just read the synopsis first.
Sure.
No one knows Torako used to be a delinquent. The Torako being the main female character counterpart to Nokotan, right? All of her classmates only know her as the perfect student, but everything changes when Nokotan, a transfer student with antlers, enters her life. Antlers aren't the only thing strange about Nokotan. Her dear nose can sniff out Torako's secret past. Whether it's at school or at the zoo, chaos follows this doe-eyed girl's every step. Torako has so many questions. Is Nokotan a deer, a girl, or something in between?
Okay, now that plot synopsis is super not useful in determining anything that, in my opinion, is the manga.
Well, I mean, it literally just says what it is. It's about it's about a friend who is both deer and girl.
Yeah, but okay, I'll just say I read 3 volumes of this. Will, what do you think about this manga?
It's Pop Team Epic.
Yes, it is.
That's essentially all it is.
Yeah.
Is that a bad thing?
No. Is it hella stupid?
You ever play like the WarioWare games?
Yeah, of course. I love them.
That's what this is. It's just wacky. It makes no sense, but you're gonna play it because it's fun. And this is a kind of series that, like, despite the low scores for the manga, I actually am kind of interested to see how it would turn out, because
I showed you the trailer, Will, and then you watched the trailer and you're just like, okay, let's see how this goes.
Yeah. So the trailer doesn't really do the manga justice, I will say.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the things that happen within the comedic sphere of my dear friend Nokotan, this is where I'm actually kind of worried. Where it's really hard to translate that on screen.
Yes.
A lot of the humor is very slapstick, but slapstick in the sense that it works on manga panels.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that Wit Studio is the one that's doing it, that's the thing that's interesting to me.
Yes.
Just because of the fact that when you think Wit Studio, you think of its gloried history.
Very fantasy-filled, high fantasy, right? You're thinking of all of the awesome things. Then all of a sudden you're thinking of, what about Spike's family? Of course, right? And then you're thinking about ahead. You're like, oh, the One Piece remake. You're thinking that ahead. Then all of a sudden, it's almost so appropriate that out of nowhere, this dear girl shows up and it's like, yo, don't forget me, Wit Studio. And they're like, oh, yeah, right.
Well, yeah. I mean, as a studio, they're also doing Isekai Suicide Squad. Before Spy Family, they've done, AOT. They've done Vampire in the Garden, Bubble. When you think those, and also, of course, Ranking of Kings, VV Fluorite Eyes song as well. It's it doesn't seem like my dear friend Nokotan fits anywhere in this.
Like, this reminds me of the Kyoto Animation Nichijou kind of phenomenon of, like, you look at their repertoire, then all of a sudden you look at Nichijou and being like, the fuck is happening here? Like, okay.
But Nichijou worked.
Nichijou worked. I get it. But it's like, when you look at that one data point among, like, the trend or catalog, it's like, what happened here? And I think that is the Wit Studio equivalent in terms of Dear Girl. And I cannot express how stupid this manga is. How stupid in a good way, in my opinion. This manga
it's Pop Team Epic mixed with Aho Girl.
Yes.
Except that the difference,
I think I said that
the
exactly,
difference with this and Aho Girl is that my dear friend Nokotan has the ability to follow through. Aho Girl is just stupid for stupid reasons.
Yeah. Like, I think watching Aho Girl makes you feel like you're stupid. And I think Dear Girl is like,
you get stupider
with them.
Yeah, you don't start stupid. You definitely slowly spiral down into stupidity.
It's like space madness, like Ren and Stimpy space madness kind of thing. Does the comedy work for you, Will? At least on the manga.
Oh, I mean, like if you just look at it from like a Pop Team Epic, Nichijou, like Aho Girl perspective, yeah, it works. It definitely gives that kind of energy. The thing that I'm most worried about with these kinds of comedy series is whether you can actually sustain that kind of comedy throughout a whole season, right? Like like some of my favorite comedy series is still Psyche K, right? And it's because the fact that even though it's all episodic, they still manage to create like that sort of like through line of plot mixed in with like the stupid comedy that happens throughout every episode. Like to this day, like I could rewatch Psyche K and I'll still be like fascinated by it. With this, that I think is going to be the main challenge, where a lot of things that happen are very episodic with a very sort of like minute through line of a plot, because the main thing is this dear girl going to, find out and also rat me out in terms of me no longer being the perfect student but actually a delinquent, right? And reading the first volume, you can kind of see it happen here and there, but the main focus is what the fuck is Dear Girl doing, right? And if you're able to create and sustain that kind of comedy throughout like a whole cur or however long it gets adapted for, it could work. However, as with anything, comedy itself is extremely subjective. And it's really hard to be able to create a sense of comedy that works for everybody. This one, I feel, is like for a very specific group of people who look for comedy, in the sense that this is just, fucking airhead, slapstick, Ren and Stimpy fucking comedy.
Yeah. So Pop Team Epic crossover with Nichijou is the best and probably the most accurate description of what you would expect out of Dear Girl. I think when, Will, you said if they can sustain that level of comedy and consistency, to me, that actually is not my issue. I think they will, almost like assuredly, with utmost certainty, in my opinion. The problem is not the anime or the manga. The problem is whether or not the audience can sustain that level of...
That's what I mean in terms of like this is for like a specific group of people who want to watch it. And if you're not in that group, hey, this shit's not going to slap.
Like, do I like Pop Team Epic? I do. But I think after, like, 2 episodes, I'm done. Not because it's bad, but because I got my fill. And I have no issue with Pop Team Epic, but I think that's kind of the same spiel with Dear Girl.
Well, that's also what I mean in terms of, like, whether they'll be able to sustain that level of comedy. Because what I mean in terms of like the level of comedy is whether they're going to adapt and stick to like the comedic beats.
I see.
It's more whether people actually have the attention to be like, I can watch 12 episodes of this.
And I don't think a lot of people can.
Because you could just introduce a random episode, like episode 6, like halfway through the season, and people would just still be like, okay, I enjoyed that. But there was also like no like sense of wanting to continue watching it. There's not going to be people who want to be like, oh, I wonder what like episode 1 was like, and then just start the journey from there. It's a tough spot. I think that's comedy series definitely have it tough because you have no idea if the comedy is going to slap for everybody. The fact that it got an adaptation is already enough to suggest that there's enough people that care about it, right? But from an outside perspective, it's not a surefire thing.
No, it's never. And especially with comedy, I think it's the most riskiest proposition to give because it is so subjective, right? And I think the other thing that also, I don't know how to really say it without offending someone, so I'm just going to say it straight up, is with the Wit Studio branding, the animation studio with their level of skill and, like catalog, I don't think a lot of people will be ready for what this property actually is. And also, I think they might get a lot of unnecessary kind of hate because they're just like, oh, this is like the off team, the B team. And maybe it is, like as a palate cleanser for Wit Studio just to cash in a check or something in between their adaptations to, fill the void. But I also feel like it doesn't deserve it, but I also understand it.
But that's also why, like I was saying, like it's really easy to just see a studio and,
make
presume it's going to be like that, right? And we at least should try to remove ourselves from that, but it's impossible.
Yeah.
Right? You see something that's done by Madhouse, you're going to want to fucking watch it, right? But you see something that's done by Bibri Animation, I don't know, right?
Yeah.
But then, like, at the same time, like, Bibri Animation has done some good stuff before, and Madhouse have also, dropped some stinkers, too.
And Mappa as well. Mappa, everyone loves them to death, but don't forget about, what's that, water polo one called? Like, Remain?
Remain, yes.
Remain. That one was a dud.
That sucked.
I mean, there's also Kyoto Animation shows that I would argue is not bad, but it's definitely a far cry from all the other Kyoto Animation shows.
Yeah, again, we don't want to focus. It's really shit because whenever we think whenever we think about adaptations, it's like we don't think about the property, we think about the studio, and it's not like Wit's fault or like the reason for them for like a property to succeed. If the property is good, you can hand that to any studio, and generally it should still be well received in some way. But when it doesn't work out, the first thing that gets attacked is the studio.
Yeah,
and that's the shit part, right? I mean, like,
we talked about production committees, right?
Yeah,
and the fact that animation studios, for the most part, gets most of the hate or love, most of the time hate, but actually benefits financially in many ways the least because they only just get a lump sum for most. Again, speaking very broadly here, so they're the forward-facing front line figurehead. And for better or for worse, they get hit with praise or criticism just the same. And I don't know. It's a tough situation to be in. And I think this manga is good, not great. And the reason why it's not great is mainly because at its core, its comedy is slapstick and catered to a specific audience.
There's a reason why I didn't read beyond the first volume, and it's because I already know that if I keep reading it, it's going to be the same.
It is.
For people who want to enjoy this kind of stuff, go for it. Like, there's absolutely nothing stopping you from reading it. Like, there's obviously enough popularity for this manga to get adapted into an anime in the first place, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, if you feel like this is your shtick, this is something that, gives you that sort of, that need for comedy this season, this is it.
And for what it's worth, right? Pop Team Epic, Aho Girl, or any types of those variants in terms of comedic anime shows, you don't get a lot of those.
No.
So, for this one to show up now, irregardless of it's done by Wit Studio or not, to me, I'm very confident that it will be really good of those slapstick comedies that's episodic, like Pop Team Epic. I'm pretty confident that it will deliver on that promise. But in terms of general reception, in terms of being able to sustain everyone through the whole cur or however long, I don't know. Like, wait, is Pop Team Epic like half episode lengths?
Yeah, I think they're shorts, But, yeah.
Yeah. So I like the manga, but I don't think it's like blowing my mind. And I think the anime will do the same. But if you're into that, this is almost like a don't miss kind of situation for you, just because it's such a rare thing to come by.
If you like Pop Team Epic, you like Nichijou, you like Aho Girl, this will probably work for you.
And I think it'll work very well for you.
But at the same time, if you're on the outside, you're going to have a very hard time trying to decide what's funny and what's stupid.
I mean, same thing with Nichijou, right?
But that's exactly it, right? Like, comedy is such like a fine-tuned art that you can't please everybody. And I think that with Nokotan, the divide's a bit wider.
Yeah.
Not like with Nichijou. I mean, even Nichijou itself was kind of controversial in that sense too, because if people wanted to watch like an anime that was funny but you didn't get the comedy, or you felt the comedy didn't work for you, then you're going to slate it, right? But there was also a lot of epic moments that Nichijou also has that got enough people to, you know, praise it and put it on that high pedestal of one of the best comedy series of all time.
Yeah, and I love some of their skits in Nichijou. I think it's fucking crazy, awesome, fantastic. But I think quite a bit of it is also like, what the fuck am I watching? This is a waste of my time. And I think Dear Girl Pop Team Epic's the same. All right,
man, you sounded way more depressed at the end. You're like, oh, this is it. This is what Nokotan's going to be. But let's like not sort of like completely crush people from wanting to watch Nokotan. It's a fine manga. It's not great, like Jason said. It will do the job if you're looking for comedy.
I will say this: the 7.1, I think it should be higher.
But like, by how much? I actually think 7.1 is kind of okay for where it needs to be.
It is okay.
Yeah, no, but and like any higher, then I would be a little bit suspect as to why. And it might make sense it being higher because, you know, fans want to vouch for the things they like. I think that if it was any higher, I'd be a bit worried.
Yeah, I actually, I mean, I can see where you're coming from.
Yeah,
for sure.
7.1 is, in my opinion, like where it should be and where it will be. Now, whether the anime adaptation coming out and then actually, you know, pleasing people would help to push the popularity as well as the score for the manga, because it does have that effect, right? We'll have to wait and see.
Do you think it will get I mean, usually with these kinds of anime adaptations, the manga gets in the spotlight. But do you think that Dear Girl will actually propel it more so just because of its niche kind of demographic?
It'll have an effect because in the end, that's what anime does,
right? But do you think it will have like a greater effect? Like, if I mean, I know I'm asking, like, you're speculating. Like,
I mean, you're talking about a manga series on my anime list that has barely 1,400 members. So anything above that's going to be amazing.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Like even you add like another 100 people, that's just under 10%. That's a pretty big increase already.
Yeah.
Right?
I do think they will get a huge influx of people.
Yeah,
so.
it's contextual.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
For something that is like so like not well known at all outside of Japan, right? At least on my anime list, right? For it to get any traction whatsoever, I think would be a boon for them. So let's at least give it a shot and see how it performs as an anime. I have no doubt that it will be able to raise its popularity in some sense, whether or not it is like minimal or like very drastically like upward trending.
Mm-hmm.
At the very least, like I think what we've covered for like the upcoming season in terms of the manga turned anime adaptations, we've kind of covered like in terms of like the non-sequels. If you want an isekai, no longer allowed in the world. If you want a romance that's a little bit off kilter, Wife Has No Emotions. If you want like a straight onslaught of shonen action, Wistoria. And if you want comedy that is very slapstick and may or may not work for you, Nokotan.
Let me be clear here. These 4 mangas, I wouldn't say any of them are actually bad mangas. Nor would I feel that their anime adaptations will be extremely like it's we always want to go for the thing like, oh, it's going to crash and burn, or it's going to be like the greatest thing ever.
But I think what it is, especially when we prefaced, you know, the whole summer season being a kind of middle of the road season, we've had this problem before when there's like so many sevens that you don't know how to navigate it. I think hopefully what we've been doing with this episode is that amongst the 7s, these are probably the ones that, despite the score, may actually work for you.
Yeah, and I think also to further that point, they are all flawed, but they're all good in like very their respective like genres. That like you can't go too wrong with any one of these 4 shows, but they're not Fieren. They're not an Oshinoko, okay?
Yeah, they're not a Kaiju number 8 or a solo leveling.
And if you go into that thinking that, then you're kind of doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah. But what it will do is that it will at least sustain your need for anime over the summer season.
Until the fall hitters come in, and then that's when shit hits the fan.
Yep. So, yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up our discussion on the ASAP picks that we've had for this episode.
What do you think about these picks this time around? Because I struggled, right?
It's hard because we read some bangers in the last ASAP, right? ASAP 5. We had we had Orb, we had The Fable, right? What are the other 2 that we read?
QA.
Oh yeah, Quality Assurance in the World. That one was good. It wasn't amazing, but it was good. I mean, it's hard to compare to Orb and Fable. Both of them are really fucking good.
And to be very clear, our next ASAP where we talk about like the fall or winter, I'm not going to reveal them here, but almost all of them are crazy bangers. Like it's almost impossible to sort of look away from the hype train that is going to come up for the next ASAP.
Yep. So don't take this as us trying to push people to read and watch the picks that we've had, right? Because these are far from like the best of the best. These are decent series that should be able to sustain your hunger for anime over the summer season, and it might make it easier for you to know what stuff to watch and pick amongst a lot of quote unquote mid shows.
Yeah, look, this is just my opinion, and it is not of Will's or the GAP opinion, but I usually use the actual summertime to watch a little bit of shows that are airing right that moment for that summer seasonal, but most of the time is backlog and on hold stuff and finishing up to prep for what would be the full onslaught that is fall and winter.
Yeah, how's the backlog situation going right now? Exactly.
I hit 100 on hold animes.
Yep.
The other day.
And your plan to watch? Let's not even talk about that, right?
I'm so sad. It used to like be 0.
When was that?
Before I started the podcast.
Exactly.
I know. Look, okay. Yeah.
So that wraps up.
I have a problem. Yeah.
That wraps up the episode. Thank you all very much for listening to this. I mean, like, do you want to divulge more into other problems you have when it comes to watching anime?
No. That's not fair. We can do that off air. We can do that off air. But what I do want to air out is we would like to thank you for listening to this episode of the Good Anime Palette podcast. We would greatly appreciate you leaving a rating or review on your podcast platform of choice. If not, all good. Thank you for listening nonetheless. If you want to reach out, you can reach us through our email, gapalette@gmail.com. That's GAPALETTE @gmail.com, all lowercase, all one word, using the handle @PaletteGood. That's capital P and capital G, all one word. And all of our social media links, as well as our Discord server, is in the show description. We have a website. We encourage you to check it out. www.goodanimepalette.com, all lowercase, all one word. Music credits for this episode. New music because it's season 8. Our intro music is Married to the Light by oomiee. Our break music is Green Summer Waves. By Qeeo. Green Summer Waves by Qeeo. And our outro music is Weeping by Cushy. You can support the music artists that we feature by listening to them on Spotify, Apple Music, or your music listening platform of choice. And Epidemic Sound provides all of our royalty-free music. If you're interested, you can always access our referral link in the show description. Terms and conditions apply. Will, I'm like fucking up everything today.
You're not supposed to say that on air. You're supposed to tell me that off air.
I'm just fucking up.
You're doing fine. You're doing fine. Jason, it's okay. Jason, the summer is going to be okay. Okay? Not all the shows over the summer are going to be amazing, but you're going to at least have some anime to watch.
But everything's on hold, and then like there's a deer girl behind me. It's kind of freaking me out. Why?
Jason,
I have a wand in my
Jason,
left hand and a
Jason,
sword in my right hand.
Jason.
Yeah. What's up?
Just chill, okay? You can talk to Siri later about this.
But she has no emotion.
I guess you're going to have to factory reset her and upgrade her then.
Damn it, she's no longer allowed in this world then. Okay, after all that pun, well, Will and I are going to move on.
Yeah.
And we wish you guys an awesome season. We have a lot of crazy stuff coming. And see you guys next time.
Take care, y'all.